back again here on Tuesday with Jaw Time with Realtor Jeet. And we have a really special guest today. My dear friend, Jeff West. He is not only a great husband, dad, granddad, he is the award-winning author of this heartwarming business fable, The Unexpected Tour Guide. This book won a bronze level award in the business fable category from the Axiom Business Book Awards in 2015 and is a recipient of kind endorsements, and they're right here, from Brian Tracy, Bob Berg, and Tom Hopkins. He's a proud member, as am I, of the Go-Giver community and the Go-Giver Success Alliance with Bob Berg and Kathy Tajanel. And friends, I want to welcome you, my dear friend, Jeff West.
Hi there. I've got my cup. I'm ready.
Hi, Jeff. Cheers.
I love it.
Oh, that's so great. So, Jeff, where are you located? Because I love how being on technology, like working through technology now, we can become friends with literally anybody in the world. So I'm located in New York.
I am actually in Central Texas. I spent a lot of years in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and then in the Houston metropolitan area. But when I left the corporate world to do what I do now, and speaking and all that, I bought a ranch about halfway between Houston and Austin. Well, I call it a ranch. My wife says it's too small to be a ranch because it's only 35 acres, but there are cows on it. So, and so I'm in the middle of nowhere. As a matter of fact, if you went to the middle of nowhere, you'd still have to go 20 more minutes to find my house. So.
Oh, wow. We're in the middle. We're considered in the middle of nowhere, and we still have a large population.
Well, to do these, I actually drive into a little town. It's about 20 minutes away from my house, and the local library there lets me do my shows there that I'm on because the internet service is so much better here, and they treat me so nice. The library in Giddings, Texas, is amazing. So.
Oh, that is great. I love it. Yeah, this is so. I haven't even met Jeff in person yet, and he's like my greatest friend in the world.
I consider that the same.
So this is so awesome. I love the fact that we can do this with in today's world. Speaking of what we do, you have a really impressive background in sales and entrepreneurial in your entrepreneurial journey. Do you want to go a little bit in, like, who are you? Who is Jeff West?
Sure. Let's see here. I'm going to make something up. No, I'm kidding. I actually originally had planned to teach. I have a bachelor's degree in music education and a master's degree in music composition. And my plan originally was to teach, but I ended up getting a sales job actually in the area of Anniston, Alabama, because I needed to finish up. My wife needed to finish up her degree, and I needed to work, and there were no teaching jobs open. And I ended up making more in sales than I would make teaching. So I just stayed in the private sector. Worked in sales for other people for a while. I was in the musical instrument business, then the industrial uniform business, and I was good at what I did. I kept getting promoted, and the industrial uniform company moved me to Texas to be their first general manager in the state. And that was all well and good. We got bought out by a competitor a couple of years later. Stayed with them a little while, but I decided, okay, it was time for me to just be working for me. I always tell people I'm much better at shaving the boss's face than kissing the boss's foot. So I'm better self-employed. And so,
That's me.
You can relate. That's one of the reasons we're friends.
Yeah.
But I ended up, I had been in sales for, I guess, 11 years at that point. And so I started in the insurance industry, entry-level position with a Fortune 500 insurance company, worked my way up in field management with them. And you were self-employed, so it worked into that really well. I had my own expenses, my own offices. And was a district manager for 8 years, a regional manager with that company for 2, and then later became a state sales coordinator. And I did that for the last 10 years that I was actively working in the industry. Then I kind of branched out. I had written a book, The Unexpected Tour Guide, obviously, And you're so sweet. Thank you. And our mutual friend Bob Berg was able to kind of give me a little mentorship and guidance on how to turn that into speaking career and all that. So I've been speaking, I'll coach entrepreneurs and sales managers about how to herd cats and build a really strong team when they're working with commission salespeople. And it's been a wonderful blessing, and I've had a lot of great relationships to come from that.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned speaking and Bob Berg, because like Bob Berg, when he's amazing, he's great. When he suggests something, it's something of stratospheric value,
It
and
is.
you don't want to ignore it. Um, and I've actually listened to a podcast from you and Bob that Bob had hosted. That's one of the speaking. It's one of the things, like, you've spoken with so many great people, and we were just talking about one of them, Lisa Wilbur, as well. And I listened to the one with Bob, and you were talking about fusion points.
Right.
And I think that that was so interesting, because a lot of us in sales, or I don't want to say us because we're go-givers,
Right.
but a lot of people, and I was guilty of this too. We think of sales and we're like, at first it's like, oh, I, I don't want to be known as a salesperson, right?
Right.
But then when you start learning the value of sales and what it actually means, then it's like, well, this is amazing. This is something, this speaks to my heart. And this is why I got into this to begin with. And
There's a reason that people go through that emotion that you're talking about there. If you look at the history of salespeople in general, it's not
Mhm.
always very flattering. And you'll see certain movies that'll portray a salesperson as being, hard and pushy, and it's
Yeah.
more about them than it is their client. But once you start to realize as a salesperson, you've got a really unique job, because
Mhm.
what you're basically doing is you're finding very real people that have some sort of a very real need. It may be in real estate, it may be in insurance, whatever it is, but you're finding very real people with a very real need, and you're connecting them with a company that's got the solution to that.
Yeah.
And because you're able to put the two together, you stand there in the middle and you get paid. And that's an amazing thing because you're solving issues. And if you approach it with that mindset, and that your purpose is to look out for that client, make sure, I always say, once they're your customer and they're getting their value from your proposition, at that point, you should just become captivated with the idea of making sure that they get the maximum value from that relationship that you can. And I'm not talking about spending a lot of money on things. I'm talking about making sure that they get to consume the value that your company and that your service provides. And you get really captivated on that, and you feel good about what you do. Uh, I always say captivated because I know it has kind of a romantic connotation
Yeah.
to it, but I think that's really what it is. I wrote an article one time called The Romance of Sales. And I really think that if you approach it that way, uh, you will find the relationship develops better. And boy, it just becomes so valuable to your client that they won't ever leave you. That's like with you, you're looking for real estate. You're looking for customers that will want to be with you for life. Every time they change homes, you want them calling you. And so that's why you develop the relationships you do. And that's one of your strengths. I get so much fun watching you do this, but that's one of your strengths in how
Thank
you
you.
relate to people. And it's gonna serve you well your entire career.
Oh, that's so sweet. I, you're so right with relationships, and you just caught me off guard with.
I didn't mean to make you blush.
It is. It's. I think it's so important to know that the passion, the passion and the love you have to serve the person and find that solution, and people feel that. They feel that energy, and that's what creates that relationship with you and your seller or your customer or your client.
Right.
um,
Well, if you do it well, which you are, when you do this well, you'll find that even when you're not doing that anymore, you've still got those relationships. I still
yes,
have Facebook friends that were my clients and my key contacts and accounts 20 years ago. And it's a friendship that means something to all of us. So it's a good thing.
it's great. It is great. You said I have a client who I sold their house to when I first started my real estate career, and we were friends on Facebook. And anytime they have a question for real estate, they know who to go to because we built that relationship. I mean, we were watching. I went to their house once to drop off pie, and we ended up watching the presidential speech.
Mhm.
Like, you just become friends, and this is what really building
Right.
relationships look like. Like, yeah, come in, have a cup of coffee, and we're watching the president talk right now. You can watch with us. And this was years ago. It's like about 4 years ago.
Right.
So it's pretty cool. It's nice to build those relationships because not only are you building your career, you're building long lasting friendships
Right. Well,
throughout the
you're building a life that you want when you do that too. How many
yeah.
of us want to love what we do for a living? We all should want to love that. How many of us actually get to? It's not as big of a percentage. And so if you do it right, you can actually have both.
Yes, absolutely. And you're great at doing that. So you're also a coach
I
or
am.
coach, right?
Yes.
Um, how and you help out. So this is basically what it is. You have these fusion points that I love, and I'm so interested in it. I've got to talk to you more about this and study it because it's so you have a science behind it. Can you explain that, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to. When I was leaving the insurance industry and beginning the speaking career and deciding which direction I wanted to go, I kind of started thinking about, what problem did I want to solve? What need did I want? What value did I want to be able to bring to someone? And so what I decided to do is I looked at an issue that's really affected sales managers and leaders of sales teams, whether you're an entrepreneur leading a sales team or you're a sales manager. There's a question that always puzzled me, and it does a tremendous number of us, is how can you take two salespeople that on paper look like they should both be extremely successful?
Mhm.
They got great job backgrounds. They've shown they have good work ethics. They've got leadership skills. And yet you could put two of them out in the field of sales, and sometimes you'll find out that one makes it and one doesn't. And so that was puzzling. So I wanted to find out why that happened. And I wanted to find out how that decision to either persist or quit happens. And so what I found as I studied is that there's an actual science. There's a neurology that happens in the brain with each and every decision that any of us make. There's no exceptions to that. And when we learn how to work within that science, we can actually implement that into our business model, and we can influence how some very important decisions get made. We can influence how a prospect decides to listen to what we want to say to them in the first place rather than just say, no, no, thank you, I'm not interested. We can decide how that decision maker, we can influence how that decision maker decides to say yes after you've talked to them about doing business with you. We can influence how they become a walking ambassador. We can influence how we as salespeople choose to make the decision to persist in our career, or how we build the team around us if we're in sales leadership. And these decisions are really important because when you get down to it, the single most important factor that usually determines the success or failure of a career or of any business, the single most important factor is usually not going to be the economy. It's not going to be the political landscape. It's not going to be your competition. It's not even going to be pandemics or anything of that nature. The single most important factor that determines the success of an organization is normally how your prospects, how your customers, how your sales team, your support team makes one very simple decision. And that's when it comes to my relationship with you. Will I persist or will I quit? So if you can have some insight and then influence in how that decision is made, it's huge for any business. And so as I was studying that, I ended up finding out the works of a Dr. Antonio Damasio. He, at the time, was a professor of neurology or neurobiology, I guess it was, at USC, and an adjunct professor at the Salk Institute. And
Mhm.
he studied a group of people. And his focus, of course, was on the brain neurology, but he studied a group of people because he wanted to find out something about the decision process. And in his book, The Descartes Error, he kind of details his findings. But basically, without getting too sciencey, Logic and emotion are actually centered in two separate parts of the brain. That's and those two parts communicate with each other. That's how we make decisions. And he studied a group of people that connection between the logic and emotional centers of the brain had been interrupted either by disease or by accident. He studied those people to see what the result was. And long story short, what he found out was those people could not make decisions. It just greatly impaired their ability to even make even the simplest of decisions. So he basically hypothesized that all decisions are made with a combination of logic and emotion. There's no exceptions to that. And so as he went further, he also talked about how the different ways emotions affect us. Now, when you think about it, if you're going to be successful at anything, you have to have that logical plan, but you have to understand how your emotions will affect you too. If we've got negative emotions that we're dealing with, or any emotions, quite frankly, they always cause a feeling inside us. If it's a negative emotion like fear, anger, loneliness, whatever, it's some sort of a negative emotion, that feeling that it creates is an uncomfortable feeling. And we have a somatic marker that links that feeling to that activity, and we don't want to do that anymore. And every time that feeling comes back up, whatever's happening at the time, we don't want to do it because it becomes ingrained into our psyche or whatever. And then the opposite side, if it's a positive emotional experience like love, joy, a sense of belonging, a sense that you're doing something that matters, that kind of thing, that also creates a physiological feeling inside of us.
Yeah.
And that feeling we like. We want to repeat that. We want to visit with that person. We want to move forward in whatever's going on. And so as I began the fusion points work and how it kind of all came to be, I realized that it's the combination of logic and positive emotion that moves things forward. And as a matter of fact, if you have the negative emotion and logic happening at the same time, you'll have a collision point. And whatever's happening at that point, the interaction is not going to continue forward very much. But when it's a positive emotional experience, someone's enjoying the interaction. You're providing value above and beyond the transaction would really require. You're providing value even before you have that first appointment with the person. When that positive emotion connects with the logic, then what you have happen is someone likes the experience and they want to move forward.
Yeah.
And I define fusion points as that unifying moment when logic and positive emotion merge and ignite, and it creates commitment, acceleration, energy. It's a great thing. And what I do, the branding that I've kind of built around that, fusion points engage the science of persistence, is I coach salespeople or sales leaders, whether they're a sales manager of some sort or they're an entrepreneur, how to intentionally create fusion points inside their whole business model, from prospecting to the sales process itself, the sales conversations, to creating that loyal customer that won't leave you no matter what, to even building the relationships in their team so that the result is those relationships persist. And when you can make the relationships persist, then you put yourself in a position where your company can greatly succeed. And that's kind of the whole branding behind it. It may be too much of an explanation. I apologize if it was. So.
No, it's not. I'm actually taking notes, using that science in building a sales model.
Absolutely. You think about it, even in prospecting, when I'm teaching a salesperson in prospecting, I say, before you even ask for that first appointment, you want to do something where you're providing some sort of value to that potential, that prospect, before you even ask for that first appointment. And then when you do that, they've already got a positive connection with you. There was something that was useful for them, and it will give them that sense. It doesn't mean you're going to get every single sale to still happen, but what will happen is all of a sudden now they like you already, and they don't even know you yet. And so then when you ask for that first meeting, and there's a process I teach, I won't go through all of that because it will get very technical.
Well, if anybody is interested in learning that, they can always go to your website, jeffcwest.com. And there's so much valuable material that you have there already that people can learn from. And then, of course, they could reach out to you to learn more about the fusion points and the engaging the science of persistence and building a sales model through that. Because it does give your business certainty. A lot of the times we hear this all the time as salespeople. Your job or your work or your career is not, um, what's the word? It's not secure.
Right.
When actually it's the most secure job we can ever have because we have control of it.
Yeah, I've had a very happy life not being in control of that, I guess. But you're right. Yeah, when you work for yourself, uh, if working for yourself, either being an entrepreneur or being a commission salesperson in whatever industry that you're in,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, what you do is, yes, you risk. You absolutely do take a risk,
Yeah,
but you get the rewards of that risk, and it's much more difficult for something to happen to that to take it away. You can be with a company that goes under if you're an employee. You can be with a company that goes under if you're in sales.
yeah,
But the truth is, when I decided that I would work for me, I knew I had been good in sales with what I had done in the past. Even with the uniform company that I was with, I was one of the tops in the nation. And I knew if I could sell for someone else, I could sell for my family. That'd be just fine.
yeah.
So,
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much for saying that, Jeff. So how do people learn new sales skills, or any sales skills
okay.
for that matter?
Well, when you look at the psychology, going back to the brain neurology, really, there are 4 stages that anybody goes through when you're learning some new process, and it can be sales, but it can also be anything you're learning. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, when I look back on my children, my daughters, they're grown women now, but when I look back on when they were kids and learning to walk, they went through the same process,
Yeah,
and it's 4 stages. The first stage in the learning process is called awareness, and that is when you first become you get exposed to something that you want to learn. You're a salesperson and you're getting exposed to a process with the company that you're with on how to make the sale happen, or you're getting exposed to the concept of fusion points, and you're kind of wanting to see how that goes. When a child first notices that the big people are walking around on 2 long things that they don't really know what they are, and they're kind of scooting around on the ground at best, or they're trying to talk and it's not coming out, or they notice that there's a pattern to the adults. The first stage is awareness. The second stage in the learning process is called awkwardness. And that's that stage in the learning process where you first attempt to duplicate or mimic the thing that you became aware of. If
mhm,
a child takes their first attempts at a step and they fall down,
yeah,
a salesperson takes the verbiage that they're going to try to use. And I don't teach scripting so much, but I do teach a structured improvisation. And there certainly are phrases that you'll need to learn in any industry that are applicable. But when you first start trying to do that, it's very awkward.
mhm.
That's what I say when a baby tries to speak and it comes out like gobbledygook, or a new salesperson tries to speak and it comes out like gobbledygook. It's all the same. It's that awkward stage. The third stage in the learning process is called skillfulness. And that's that stage in the learning process where you are first really starting to feel like you're getting a handle on it. You're saying the right things, doing the right things. The customer's saying the right things back. You're getting clients. You still have to think about what you're doing, but you can tell, hey, I'm starting to get a handle on this. I like this.
Yeah,
And then the fourth stage in the learning process is called reflex action. And
re-
that's that stage in the learning process that you really don't have to think about it anymore. You've done it. It's become part of who you are. You don't have to think of the phrases you say. They just are you saying them. You don't have to think about these things. When a child learns to finally speak, and by the way, they never stop again.
FYI.
Why they never. Thank God. I love my children, and they're just awesome. But so it's that stage where it's just a part of who you are. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah,
The interesting thing about these 4 stages is there's only one. Number one, you can't skip a stage. You have to start at awareness. You have to go through awkwardness. You have to get through skillfulness, and then hope your goal is finally reflex action, so you don't have to think about it as much. You can't skip a stage, and there's only one way to move through those stages, and that's repetition.
yeah,
The more times you repeat something, the more the more you move through those processes. And the sad thing is, I can't tell anybody how many repetitions it takes for them to get to skillfulness, which is where they'll start to make a living, or how many repetitions it will take to get to reflex action, where they'll make a great living at what they do. But I can tell you exactly how many repetitions it takes to get from awareness to awkwardness. That is one. It is awkward from the very first time you try.
I love that, because you just said skillfulness is where you start to make your living.
Right.
A lot of people think that it's the awareness part where you'll just, magically start, but it doesn't. And I love that you use children as an example, because I was so you know Amrinder, and she's 5 years old. Last year she started to dip her feet in the pool, and before, she didn't even want to go near the pool. So it just started with the awareness of dipping her feet in the pool. And it was so hot last summer, she actually went in the pool with her floaty on. So I came back from a walk. It was like 7 o'clock at night, 7:30. I was just telling this story to one of my partners. Um, and she wanted to come in the pool with me. So she kind of came in the pool. That girl did not get out till 9:30 at night.
I love it. I love it.
And here was the thing, and I posted this on Instagram too. She didn't let go of me for 2 hours. And she was within that awareness that she was in the pool. And then the awkwardness by 9 o'clock, she started having that awkwardness of where she was letting go of me, and she was just like about this far away. But where she was enough to reach me if she thought that she was going to drown. And by 9:30, I was like, Amrinder, we got to go inside. I'm getting cold now. She goes, okay, okay, okay. And she closes her eyes. This is a 4-year-old. She closes her eyes and she goes, all right, I'm ready. And she lets go of me and swims to the stairs by herself in her floaties.
Right.
Where she, that went up to I guess that's the awkwardness part where she does and gets into that skillfulness.
And she was.
Yeah, after that, she kept jumping in the pool, and every day was, I want to go in the pool.
She just demonstrated for you how every salesperson that you work with as part of your team that you'll be coaching and all that, she just demonstrated to you how that process will work with a salesperson. Because at first, they've got to have you with them every step of the way, and then they'll start, as you start letting them do more of what's going on so that you're equipping them to do that. They'll still want to stay close, but they'll start to do it, and then they'll start branching out. And as they're going through the learning stages, the stages of learning, the process that happens to salespeople who fail is they don't get enough repetitions in to get to skillfulness. If they can get to skillfulness, they're probably going to be successful in sales their whole life.
Yes.
But what will happen is they won't get enough repetitions in to get to that point, and that's where we lose them. And so if you can get your salespeople past that point to where they're skillful, they can handle things, they're going to be with you for the long haul. Okay. And one of the ways that I always teach to do that, going back to the fusion point thing, is you've got to help your people find that fusion point that builds their connection emotionally with the logic of what they're doing for them personally. And when they find that and you help them, guide them that way, their success is just going to be huge. So.
That's so beautiful, Jeff. I love that. Like, I just learned something new myself. It's like we already knew it, but when you hear it from, like, I just heard it from you and it makes sense.
Tell everybody you know.
It makes absolute sense. It's like you're there every step of the way, and then when they're ready to let go, it's like you're watching something beautiful just start flourishing.
Oh, yeah. And just like your child, eventually they won't need you there all the way, and they'll be independent and working independently. They'll still want your advice and your counsel, and they'll still ask you about your opinion on things, but they won't need you for the mechanics. And that's when you know that the job you've done has been well done. My girls grew up learning the phrase that I said, my job is to make sure that when you hit about 13 or 14, that your concrete has dried well and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny you say that. I just want to do a quick reset before we continue. If you have anybody watching, if you have any questions, please do put them in the comments and I'll pull them up. Or if you have any comments, please do comment. This is great stuff that Jeff is teaching us. I'm definitely learning a lot and having a lot of realization of growing a team. Um, it's like having children. It's actually really like that. I have my son's actually going to be 18 on Saturday.
You said that when we were at the Go Givers thing last week. I thought, you can't have an 18-year-old. But I'm glad you do.
I do, yeah. And I said to myself, wow, I'm proud of myself. I've raised an adult.
Yes, you have.
There's that concrete, like, okay, you can take care of yourself, like you're here.
Yeah.
And it's like looking at that, it's like it's a huge accomplishment to me.
Absolutely.
And then my daughter is 16. She got her permit. And I'm watching her through her awkwardness. She's gonna kill me for saying this right now. I'm watching her through her awkwardness and watching the brake and the gas.
And awkwardness, everything's still scary. It doesn't matter if you're driving a car or making a sales call. It's scary. Get through it. Have the repetitions.
Yep. And then you realize by the time you've got your license and you're driving for, whatever, you're not thinking about the gas or the pedal anymore. Or matter of fact, is stopping at the red light or making that turn. You're not thinking how to do it.
Right.
It's that reflex action that you're talking about.
I remember when I could finally not stare at the very front of the car. I could stare out further.
Oh gosh, I was so scared when she was driving the other day. I said, I can't teach you. Sorry, I'm not equipped for this. I'll leave it to your dad. So I love this. This is so much fun, Jeff. How do you suggest that new salespeople do approach their training then? And I think you said it. You said it.
Yeah, I like to tell everyone when you think about when you joined the gym. Most of us at one point or another in our life, we've paid the money, we've joined a gym. And you think about what a good gym does. The very first visit there, they'll put you with a trainer, and that trainer will show you all the machines. They'll teach you how to do the repetitions based on your goals. If they're a good trainer, they're asking, okay, what are your goals? Are you trying to lose weight? Trying to get in better cardiovascular conditioning? Are you trying to tone up? What are your goals? And from those goals, they'll show you how to do the activities, and they'll put you on a regimen of repetitions of those activities. And then if you want to pay them to do that each time, then they'll show up and do that each time at your request and your funding. So I tell everybody, you have to approach your training differently when you go into sales. There's two definitions of the word training. The first being when you're coaching or mentoring someone about a particular skill or activity. And then the second one is a daily regimen of physical activity that you do that builds your strength and your skill in whatever chosen discipline that you have. Thus, going back to the gym idea.
Yeah.
You think about the greatest sports people we have. I look back at legends like Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and these people. They didn't just accidentally get good at what they did. Michael Jordan, my understanding is he didn't make the basketball team at his school the first year he tried out. And then according to his mother, every day, and by the way, mothers will not lie. Every day for 2 hours a day at least, that young man was out there shooting hoops. And he was practicing his craft. And he didn't have a coach say, hey, Michael, put a little bit more arch on the ball. He didn't have stands full of people going, Jordan. He didn't have that then.
Yeah.
It was one young man with a commitment to a daily regimen of physical activity to build his strength and his skill in any given discipline. We have to think of sales like that. The truth is you're never going to in a gym, you're not going to lose 1 pound. You're not going to get in any better shape. You're not going to develop your muscle tone by what your trainer does. Having a trainer is great. Having a resource to ask questions to is great. Having someone to show you the ropes is great. But what will make you successful in your gym is when you commit to that daily regimen of physical activity to build that strength and that skill and that chosen discipline. Same thing in your sales career. Once you get some awareness and you start to learn you learn about the things that you need to get good at, then you go out there and you do that daily regimen of physical activity. You do the repetitions. You do what it takes by whatever business model is right for your industry. Things that I may talk about may have applied perfectly for me. You may have to adapt them for your industry. But you commit to that daily regimen of physical activity to build your strength and your skill in now what is your business chosen development. So
That's beautiful. And I think that goes for anyone, sports, business, sales, teaching,
absolutely,
music.
absolutely.
You've
I
got to.
used to practice 2 hours a day when I was getting my music degree, and if I didn't practice 2 hours a day, I would slack back. I mean, my progress would come back. It didn't
Mhm.
take long. I would know it almost immediately. It didn't take much longer than that my professor would know, and if I did it too long, even anybody who didn't know how to play would know.
That's so funny you say that because when we were kids, we had Sunday classes, Friday classes for learning how to sing our spiritual songs.
Hmm.
And I used to play I don't know what it's called in English, but it's kind of like a piano or harmonium, I
Okay,
think it's called. And where you like blow it's the pipes, I mean the air, and then you have like the
like an
keyboard.
organ, like a pipe organ, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I know how to, by 18, 19, 20, I was good. I knew like I was at that reflex action part.
Hmm.
20 years, 25 years later, I I can't like I try to remember. I only remember like three keys, and it's because I haven't practiced
Yeah, you
since.
can slip, but it's like any skill that we have. We can slip on that,
Yeah,
and it's. But if you were to take the time to put right back into that,
yeah,
you would get it faster now because you do have a certain amount of skill that's embedded.
yeah. That's so amazing. I love that you were going through the neurology of it because it's fascinating. The brain is one fascinating organ.
I've always wanted to know how my brain worked.
And I love that you go through the science. And for team members or anybody, how would you use the science in reducing turnover?
It's I would stack the deck in my favor.
Okay.
That's the best way to say that. The fusion points are that combination of logic and with the positive emotion. Now that you got to have the logic, you have to have a really good plan for your people to succeed. You have to have a really good plan. They need to understand their part and how your business works and what it means out there. But then you stack the deck on the positive emotional experiences to go along with that. I've known really good people who are very well intentioned that just thought, well, as long as I've got the logic down, I don't need all the positive emotional context. And they
Mhm.
were thinking in terms of rah rah, big meetings and all that. And okay, sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes maybe it's not. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about positive emotional experiences where they love working with you. You connect with them, where they understand what it means to the end user. Like I was in the insurance industry. I wanted to make sure that my people understood how what we do affected the life of the person who owns a policy and how
Mm,
that what that meant to them at the time. If they understood that, it helped. It was a positive emotional experience that was happening and combining with the logic of doing that. When you're leading a sales team, one of the things that I used to do very consistently was when someone had a great week, I would send them a card. I would send them a handwritten card, tell them, "Hey, great week, so proud of you." And it's funny, I got tickled the other day. I have been out of that industry basically for 8 years now, and one of my people that worked with me at the time, I'm still friends with so many of them. It's hilarious. But she had sent me a Facebook post about the idea that she really missed me because she enjoyed those cards
um,
and she enjoyed the different things that I would do. And it just
oh,
meant a lot to her.
yeah.
And So, and the guy that's doing the job now, he said, "You've been gone 8 years, and your people still love you." And
Wow.
it's because I connected with them. And so that doesn't mean everyone loved me. Lord knows if I had to do something where I had to move somebody out of a position, that wouldn't be the case for them. But the majority of people and the people that we grew with, that was what was happening. And so it was a good context. So you keep stacking the deck in your favor with that connection. You do fun things as a group. It doesn't have to be the big rah things. It can be as simple as you take your team out and you go have a picnic and hey, bring your spouse and your children. Everybody bring a potluck dish. It doesn't have to be a big expense to you. Those kind of things where they can have a positive emotional experience, linking with the logic of what you're trying to accomplish. Every time you do that, it creates that bond, and that's the difference. And when I see a sales organization where they've just had phenomenal growth and they've had huge jumps in their own sales volume, it's because they've built those connections and they're not having turnover. The same thing really applies with your clients.
Yeah.
You can do things with your clients that always are providing value to them above and beyond the transaction. You're doing things that are just special things. Like, I know how much you do this. You send out the note cards that Bob taught us all to do. So you do things like that, and I got this from you. So things like that. If I were in New York, I would be buying a house from you. I'm just telling you. Nobody else was in my business. But the point is, it's just such a strong bond. And so if you're wanting to keep the turnover down in your organization and you're wanting to use fusion points to do that, that's how you do it. And the same thing with your clients. You can even do it in your prospecting. There's so many things you can do that will make that. And quite frankly, just like most good business lessons, same thing works in your personal life.
Yes.
If your personal relationships are constantly collision points, so it's negative emotion with the logic of whatever's happening at the time, that's a tough way to go. But if you're constantly creating fusion points for each other as a couple, then I think it's the difference in the success or failure of a relationship. That's one of the reasons I love John David Mann and Anna Gabriel Mann's book, The Go-Giver Marriage, because it teaches that. It doesn't talk about it in the same context, but it teaches that exact context about how to make that valuable. So.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. Because that book was absolutely amazing. All Go-Giver books are absolutely amazing, and they all tie into each other.
Absolutely.
And you got that practice, that skill to teach you to do it. You just gotta, like you said, do the work, do it. You have to take action on it.
Plus, I love watching good people succeed. In the Go-Giver series with Bob Berg and John David Mann writing those, and now with the Go-Giver Marriage with John and Anna, these are all really good people, and they're succeeding, and I love that.
Absolutely. Something that you did in your career that is still impacting people, that they still remember you. That's a huge impact. That is an impact you're putting on people's lives. And that's what it comes down to, is like, how many lives have you impacted in your lifetime? And that's just beautiful, Jeff.
Well, thank you. You're very
I
kind.
think
It's all about those people. It's not about me. I didn't mess it up. I was very blessed to have some great, wonderful people around me.
That's great. That's just amazing. But it still is that you've impacted their life somehow, some way. And that matters. That absolutely matters. And I know you impact my life all the time, every week. Wednesday. If you want to know how, you just got to ask, and we'll tell you how.
Exactly. They should join us. We would love to have their company. So.
Yep, absolutely. Just go visit thegogivercommunity.com.
Absolutely.
You do meet absolute amazing people. And this is how we got to meet and become great friends and learn so much. Like, I learn so much every time I hear you or Bob or Kathy or Anna or Lisa. I was just telling Jeff, and I have to tell you guys, I have these are some amazing friends to be around. Here's Lisa.
That's right.
She is a heart, though. She's a heart. But But she sends like the most nicest cards. Like I cried when I got this card.
Yeah,
It's up here. This is you bring sunshine to my world.
I love it.
They're so wonderful. Like we haven't even met in person yet, but we've impacted each other's lives in such a way that we grow each other, and that's beautiful.
It reminds me, you're too young to remember the show, but there was a show called Cheers, and it reminds me of Cheers because we gather on a regular basis. We
Mhm.
don't have a bunch of beer, but we do gather on a regular basis.
We have coffee or
We
tea.
have coffee or tea, and we mentor each other. We coach each other, and it's everybody gets to know everybody's name. It really does. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. That's what it reminds me of. So.
Really, it's so beautiful. We do have so we have a little bit of time. I do want to go a little bit into this amazing book you wrote. My friend wrote this, guys.
And my friend's holding it, so.
And like I highlighted like these like this is powerful. This little book is just so powerful. It I cried and I laughed reading it.
That's
So
a good thing.
yes.
It touched you emotionally and it taught you something. I didn't know fusion points back then, but I knew it after.
And it did actually, yes, because it's so emotional. Like I didn't even have to write no, I highlighted because when I do go back, I want to see like this is what I was
Right.
thinking. But it's just so great. And it could you go over this a little bit? What was going on when you wanted to write this?
Well, I have always loved writing. And even back when I was still the state manager for the insurance company I was with, I actually I would send out a lot of coaching emails to my leadership team. And I would try to do it in such a way I would tell a story and then work the sales lesson into the story. I've always related to that. When From Og Mandino to Bob Berg and John David Mann, these things that's the style that I like to consume the most. So it's what I like to do the most as far as writing. And I had I wanted to do a book to teach certain sales lessons, and then thought, well, how can I do that interestingly? And my office in Houston was at the intersection of a major interstate and a cross street that was sometimes it was inhabited by homeless people,
Okay.
well, pretty much daily. And I always did a little U-turn under the bridge there, and I would oftentimes I would give money to them. I always had a deal with God. I said, God, if I'm not supposed to give money to this person, let the light be green. Other than that, I'm going to help somebody.
That's awesome.
It was up to him at that point. So,
Give me a sign.
exactly. But there was one particular homeless man that always kind of caught my attention, and I would always try to do something for him, and sometimes I would do bigger things for him, and I just loved the sound of his voice because he wouldn't look till I started to go around, but I could hear him go, "Whoa!" I like it. So that character was a character of my mind. I was so blessed to have some great sales mentors. One of my best sales mentors and life mentors is Jack Amberson. He's a man lives in Alabama. He was my first boss out of college, and he was just such a good person. So had already decided I was going to work his character, not just a character, but his actual character into the storyline.
Oh, wow.
And I called him one day and I said, "Hey, I'm writing this book. I would like to know would you mind if I use your real name?" I said, I don't have to. I can use any name, but if you wouldn't mind. He graciously granted me the permission to use his real name, so I've got that in there. I use family names. I use a lot of fictional stories, but a lot of real stories that have happened in my life, and I just weave them into the sales lessons. But the storyline, for those that don't know the book yet, it's a story of a young salesperson who he's a good guy. He's hardworking. He's not afraid to do things, but he's just not making it happen. And then he meets this homeless man, and it totally changes the direction of his career. And so it works in some really great stories. I have a lot of friends who aren't even in sales, and they said, when I read that book, I liked it, and I don't like sales books, but they liked it, and so it means a lot to me. So
It's a great book. So how For the reader, for any of the audience, when they would pick up this book and read it, because I highly suggest you pick up this book and read it. It's a very short read. What is the one takeaway that, as the author, you would love for them to take away from it?
If I pulled it down to one, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you one for personal life and one for
Okay.
your business life.
Okay.
In your business life, the most valuable thing I learned was actually something I adapted from the first time I read Endless Referrals by Bob Berg. I took what he did in networking and I adapted it in my own business model, but it's a real story that happened. And it's basically the character in the book sets up a meeting with one of his clients, and he gets there, and the first thing he does is he tells his client, he said, "First thing I'd like to do is thank you. I do business. This is how I feed my family. You're my customer. I so appreciate that." And it really did happen to me. There was a mortgage company in Dallas, Texas. I'll always remember. And then I told the man, and he said, "Well, thank you." And I said, "Well, I would like to return the favor." I said, I meet a lot of people out there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've got existing clients. I'm always meeting new people. Could you tell me what questions I need to be asking them so that I can know if they're a good referral for me to send your way?"
Mm-hmm.
And Harjeet, he took his glasses off. I'll never forget it. He said, "I'll tell you the answer to that question in just a second, but I have to tell you something else first." And I said, "What?" He said, "Thank you."
Yeah.
I said, "For what? I haven't done anything." He said, "Oh, you have to." He said, "I've been in business over 30 years, and a lot of salespeople have asked me for referrals. You're the first person in 30 years to ask me how you could give me referrals. Thank you."
Yes.
And so that was a huge lesson. If you, whatever client base you may have, if you can connect them to each other and help them in their business pursuits, guess what? Every time one of your competition or one of your competitors tries to get that person to do business with them, they're going to say, "No, not
Yeah.
happening." So it worked really well. The personal story to me that's the biggest lesson is actually a story that's in there about Jack Amberson.
Yeah.
And when I was finishing up my master's degree in Texas, and I was looking for a job, I knew I needed to be back in the Anniston, Alabama area, and I knew I was going to be there. There weren't any teaching jobs open because I'd already checked, so I needed a sales job, or I needed a job. A friend of mine knew that this position was open with a musical instrument company and said, "Hey, contact Jack Amberson." So I did. And long story short, he said, "Well, the best way to know if this is going to be a good job fit for you and if you're going to be good for the team is you've got spring break coming up. Come spend the week with me. Ride with me. You'll see me do the job. You just stay at my house. It'll be fine. You don't need to get a hotel. Just stay at my house, and we'll just ride together for a week. And that way, it would be good for both of us." Well, every morning we'd get up early because we had to leave early. We'd be having coffee or breakfast around his breakfast table there. His wife would bring it over. But every morning when his children would wake up, his son, I think, was in the first grade and his daughter was younger than that at the time, they would run in there and they would jump up in his lap. He'd give them a big hug and a big kiss, and he'd say, "I love you so much. I am so glad that God picked me to be your daddy."
Mm-hmm.
Harjeet, I have to tell you, um,
It gives me goosebumps.
sometimes I'm old and that's still hard for me to get through this story. But I know my parents loved me. They
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated that, but they weren't that verbal about it. Okay, that wasn't how they were raised, I'm sure. So it just didn't happen that way. And I'd never seen a man especially do that and just tell his kids how much he loved them and how much of a blessing they were and all that. And so I decided right there that that's the way I wanted to raise my family someday.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been blessed with two of the most wonderful daughters. They were amazing children, teenagers, and now they're amazing adults and mothers themselves. But they grew up having a dad that would say, "Hey, I love you," and a mom too that would say, "I love you. I'm so glad God picked me to be your dad." And so they grew up with a very different perspective on life than I did. And so it just makes all the difference in the world. And then now, one of my favorite things I've ever seen, and it's happened with both my daughters. I was at their house, and they have children. I've got 3 grandbabies now, 2 boys and a girl. Anyway,
Oh,
but they both at different times, overheard them whispering to their children, "I love you so much. I'm so glad God picked me to be your mom."
oh,
Jack Amberson, I sent him a letter. This was before the book came out, actually, because I was already doing this, and I just wanted him to know how much of an impact. I only worked for him for a couple of years, but I
yeah,
wanted him to know how much of an impact he had. And I said some things in the letter to just let him know how much I appreciated that and how much the lives of my family changed because of that.
that's beautiful.
And he and I talked, and he gave me a call, and he said, I have to talk to you. It's okay. He said, I'm going to be honest. He said, when I opened that letter, I was crying. And I said, well, I was too, probably when I wrote it. And so, but we've kept up with each other. And then he gave me permission to use him. And everything I wrote in the book is so much who he was. Granted, I've worked in fictional stories too, but it's so much the character of the man. And I have been blessed to be around mentors that changed the direction of my life, both business and personal. Uh, it's been a good thing. So,
That is beautiful. I love that you said that. Um, Blessed by wonderful mentors. I think that's so important for everyone to have someone to look up to and learn from, someone that has that knowledge and that wisdom to teach you
right.
something that's so impactful, not just for your life, but you have a legacy going on with your children with just that one little nugget that you took from your mentor.
Yeah. It, I had, life is lived forward, but you understand it looking backwards. And even when I was going through difficult times in my life, which I've certainly had,
Yeah.
I can look backwards and know that, okay, this is just the way the path was taking me. This is because I needed to be here eventually. And so I've always been okay with that. I wasn't necessarily okay with it at the time. I told somebody once, I said, I don't know that God had to humble me quite that much, but he did a good job.
Oh, most definitely. I know I'm going through that. Oh, gone through it. I've had my kids at a very young age, 19 and 20. And so I know you were surprised when I said I have a
Right.
18-year-old coming
Right.
up this September, this Saturday, and a 5-year-old on Sunday.
So spread them out.
I know. And in between, I got my 16-year-old, and I have one who's learning how to drive a car, one who's about to go to college soon. And it wasn't easy
Right.
as a teenage mom, going to college and working 3 jobs. And, you know, my husband was just learning the culture here as well.
Right.
And, he was a teen, he was 20, 21 years old as well. And he's learning how to navigate through a whole new country,
Right.
which was in itself a challenge. So yeah, you're right. But I thank God because that journey brought me to where I am now in my learning phase, and my career
Right.
and growing my team and meeting wonderful mentors like you and Bob and so many other mentors that have come across throughout my life. And you know, it's just something that's so important for everyone, I think, to find someone they know, like, and trust that will guide them. And our parents are wonderful guides. And, I love my mom and I love my dad.
Right.
And they taught us, like you said earlier, um, you set the concrete, you can survive.
Right.
Your kids can survive. Now it's up to us to move forward in the world and find our place.
Right.
Find our place and find our journey. And I'm kind of scared that my son is going to go through it soon.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm like, okay, I gotta let it go and let him find his place in this planet, on this planet.
Right.
And So with that, I would love for you, Jeff, to close because you're special guest. All my guests are so special that I love for them to close out, and then we'll say bye.
Well, you're very kind. Um, I did put a couple of things on my website. If anybody wants to go there, that's some free coaching that I do. That's jeffcwest.com/UFC for ultimate free coaching. I hope you end up, if you haven't gotten the book yet, you actually can download the first 3 chapters there. So hopefully you'll get the book too. But I just, for those of you that are following Harjeet, I have to tell you that the spirit that she has, both uh, both off the camera and on the camera, that's it's a unique gift, and uh, don't ever be afraid to keep following on that because she's
Aw.
just very special talent in that area. And I I would love to connect with any of you. I always tell people, if you want to email me at jeff@jeffcwest.com. I'll take your email. I even will do some free consulting every now and then in certain situations for people. So uh, I've enjoyed Harjeet. I've enjoyed so much being on your show. You're one of the special blessings in my life. So
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, Jeff. I just put this up, jeff@jeffcwest.com. That is Jeff's email. And I also put your book in the comments. Hopefully, it is in the comments. So you just have to click on Amazon and really get this book. And thank you so much for giving us your time. I know we're at an hour now. So thank you, Jeff, so much. I
my
appreciate
pleasure.
your time and the knowledge and wisdom you did share with all of us here.